there's also that element of the right of the public to know. Now, at what point are the media or broadcast stations supposed to strike that chord of fairness and balance with regards to reporting insecurity or terrorism?
That's a very tricky one. It's very tricky because the pressure is enormous, and that's why you see this is where in more gatekeeping is very important. This is why gatekeeping comes into play. But the pressure, especially with the dawn of digital media, social media, and the competition, I'm worrying about your rating, your viewership, because this is the dilemma. It's a serious dilemma, my understanding of it, because how do you now strike this balance we're talking about? At one point, does reporting banditry or giving bandits airtime, ample airtime, to air their grievances against the state? At what point does this stop, and at one point it becomes glamour?
So we begin today's conversation taking our quote from Dave Bratt, an American academic and politician who is the Dean of the Liberty University School of Business, a member of the Republican Party. He served as the U.S. representative for Virginia's 7th Congressional District from 2014 to 2019. He once said, "The media does play a vital role in our democracy. And if we cannot depend on journalistic ethics, the nation's in trouble." Great. All right, let's take our second quote from Naomi Wolf, an American feminist, author, and journalist. She once said, "Documentary film without nuanced journalistic sourcing risk being sensational, tendentious, or broad-brushed." All right. Our last quote is from Bill O'Reilly, an American conservative commentator, journalist, author, and television host. He once said, that's broadcast journalism, is a brutal arena where the knives are sharp and the toughest Kevlar vest in the world will not protect you forever. Okay. So let's see how all of this could relate to what we'll be discussing tonight. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from Captain's Television Studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now, the National Broadcasting Commission, as NBC, has imposed a fine of 5 million naira each on Multichoice Nigeria Limited, owners of DSTV, Telcom Satellite Limited, that's TSTV, and NTA-Startimes Limited for broadcasting a documentary by the BBC Africa Eye titled Bandits Warlords of Zamfara. And in addition, Trust Television Network, that's Trust TV, was also fined 5 million naira for the broadcast of another documentary titled Nigeria's Banditry, The Inside Story, which was aired by the station on March 5th, 2022. And the NBC disclosed this in a statement titled NBC Sanctioned Pay TV Platforms, issued and signed by its Director General, Balarabe Shehu Ilela. Now, you recall that the Minister of Information and Culture, La Mohammed, had said that the federal government would sanction Trust TV and BBC for terrorism glorification in their documentaries. Mr. Mohammed had said that the federal government was aware of the unprofessional documentary by the BBC Africa Eye, where interviews were granted to bandit warlords and terror gangs, thereby promoting terror in the country. While appreciating the need of educating, informing, and enlightening the public on issues bordering on development and happenings within and outside the country, the Commission advised broadcasters to be circumspect and deliberate in the choice and carriage of content deleterious to Nigeria's national security. Consequently, the NBC said airing and carriage of the documentaries contravened the provisions of the Nigerian Broadcasting Code 6th edition. Now, the NBC further stated that the imposed penalties on the broadcast media platforms and stations was to be remitted not later than August 30th, 2022. It said failure to comply would lead to the imposition of a higher sanction as provided in the NBC Code. The NBC enjoined broadcasters to be instruments of national unity and desist from falling into antics of using their platforms to promote and glamorize subversive elements and their activities. Meanwhile, the International Press Center, that's IPC, expressed disappointment with the NBC over the 5 million naira fine slammed on Trust TV network and other media outfits. The IPC, in a statement by its press freedom officer, Melody Lawal, described the development as an arbitrary fine. She reminded the federal government, that's the Minister of Information and Culture, Mohammed, and the NBC that the banditry ravaging Nigeria and putting the lives and property of citizens in jeopardy was not a creation of the media. The IPC called on the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, the Nigeria Guild of Editors, and Nigeria Union of Journalists and other professional bodies championing freedom of the press and freedom of expression in the country to rise in unison in condemnation of this new development and hostility by the government. Now, that will be the basis of our conversation tonight as we have our guest, Ali. He is a journalist. He's also the vice president of the Nigeria's Guild of Editors. Now, we'll kickstart this conversation after this timeout. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Captain's Television Studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you're right on time for the interview. Our guest on the show today is Ali. He is a journalist and he's also the deputy president of Nigeria's Guild of Editors. I'm sure you want that part.
No, it's okay. You said it.
All right, so now let's get started. Let's get your opening remarks on the documentary or the film. I'm sure you must have seen that documentary and the film, both the one that was initially posted by Trust TV and then the one that was posted by BBC, tagged the Warlords of Zamfara State. And also, I'm sure you must have seen the respective sanctions and fines meted to the broadcasting station in that regard. Now, what are your thoughts on that film or that documentary? Does it actually is it actually sending the right message to the right people at the right time?
Well, thank you, Annabelle, for having me in the studio to discuss this very important issue. Important because of the reaction on the part of the regulatory authorities. But I think what they did is to quarrel with the messenger, not the message. Having watched both documentaries, I've commended both, especially the Trust crew, for doing a commendable job.
Okay. And
they pushed the frontiers of journalism, and that's what journalism is all about. Journalism is about giving, in as much as we don't encourage banditry, terrorism, we don't do that. But the duty of the media is to be everywhere. And while we thought the documentary, by especially the Trust, which started before the BBC took that cue, actually it was the Trust television that pioneered that documentary. It spoke with all the warring warlords, and I mean the bandits, and then just oppose it with the situation that compelled them into banditry. And some of them, they are grass with the state, they are genuine. They are looking, because they were victims also of banditry when it started in small proportions. Their cattle were taken away, their means of livelihood destroyed, and they had no alternative. That's the only thing they know. And even on that, you see, is the failure of the state over the years to plan, to accommodate, to give some of these bandits the necessary skills to face challenging times.
Okay.
You understand? So I would say the Trust documentary, Trust actually started it. The BBC nearly upped the ante. And of course, naturally, BBC being a global organization, a global media, a brand name, caused the knee-jerk reaction on the part of the government. And of course, look for the fall guy. And what better fall guy than the local version of the BBC effort, which actually, like I said, the Trust Television pioneered that. It was the first to go deep into the bushes, speak with these guys, listen to their complaint. And the whole idea is to find a resolution. And that is one of the key role of the media. In conflict situation, you try as much as possible, because the media, like you know, where there are certain conventions that protect media practitioners, even in conflict zones. Unless you are mindless of that, you dare not, because the media in conflict situation is an arbiter. It brings both sides of the divide to air their views. You take this and you do that professionally.
Okay.
Yes. So I would say, by and large, having watched both documentaries, having even did a critical content analysis, I would say yes. I've not seen why the reaction by the NBC, and then why even narrow it down to the Trust. And you understand, because is the home, is the fall guy, is the kid at home.
So are you saying that they actually went, they actually sent their dagger on this documentary because BBC is global, and then they decided to air it. So now they decide to use the same paintbrush to paint all of them.
Yeah, you see, the Trust documentary aired, I think, the first quarter of the year. And there was no reaction. For months, there was no reaction until the BBC came. And the BBC, and this is why I said, because Trust Television, how old is Trust Television? Just a year. I think today exactly marks it a year that it's began to operate. It's just a year, it's just a baby, literally a toddler, trying to gain viewership and followers. It's not even it's not on DSTV. It's free to air and it's on StarTimes. This great television station here, the Capital, is way ahead of Trust Television. So when it happened, they ignored it because it did not make the required impact it thought it would make. And a lot of people didn't give it.
Even though it was widely viewed.
What?
Even though that documentary was widely viewed.
Even it was widely viewed, at least the reaction wasn't that, because there is something about brand name now.
Okay.
And Trust, or like the newspaper, is yet to get there. Trust Television is not as popular as Trust newspaper. The newspaper. It's just like till this moment, the BBC radio is not as popular as the BBC television. You understand? People, because of history, BBC, the radio has been there longer than the television. But the television is because of the brand now. You extend the brand to television now. And that's why when it aired, suddenly they remember that Trust did something similar to this. And actually, it was Trust Television that gave perhaps the BBC an idea. But you see, you also have to give it to the Trust. Trust, some of its leading light, Trust Television and even Trust newspaper, had worked in the BBC. They saw an opportunity. The immediate past chief executive officer of Daily Trust, the newspaper that is, Media Trust, was a staff of BBC. The current executive director, editorial and digital media, he was a staff of the BBC. He worked in London. In fact, he was the guy who pioneered the social media component in the House of Service of the BBC. So you could say that having honed their skills in the BBC, the drivers of Trust Media actually had this brainwave. Let's do an exhaustive documentary on the banditry going on in the Northwest. And voila, they did it. But because Trust Television is not as popular, like I said, as BBC, nobody thought much about it. In fact, very scant regard. It did not make the impact the BBC documentary made. Okay. Just like the BBC is coming out with another documentary about secret societies and cults in the country. It's already making snippets of it, it's already making waves.
So now, do you think that has that BBC, or has BBC actually become a tool for terrorism and banditry glorification, as the federal government suggests in that comment that they made, or is it reporting in the best tradition of public interest journalism?
Well, that is a question people always ask me. You understand? Not necessarily in forum like this, but people ask me, do you think the BBC or Trust ad by laying bare, exposing? I say no.
Okay.
They've done the job as professional as possible. You see, part of the ethics of course, like we said, we don't glamorize. There are ethics. You don't glamorize terrorism. In reporting terrorism or banditry, you don't glamorize it. You don't make the fellas look like heroes. You understand? But you might say that, yeah, maybe the BBC documentary came short in some aspects, not totally. You don't glamorize, like I said, in interviewing elements in any conflict situation. The media, as always, should side with the underdog. The underdog. But you see, bandits, terrorists, insurgents, they're outlaws. So you don't glamorize what they say. You don't make them appear like the victim. And unfortunately, even you will say to a smaller extent, they are making, like the case of the one I was saying. Look, they are glamorizing. If you glamorize, make it look appealing as to inspire others, that is going against the ethic of the profession.
Okay, like you just, as if you know what I was going to ask you next, because then there's always the rush by broadcast station to be the first to release their news and their scoop and all, and there's always that rush to compete with other media stations, like you said, like for the underdogs. Now, at what point, and then there's also that element of the right of the public to know. Now, at what point are the media or broadcast stations supposed to strike that chord of fairness and balance with regards to reporting insecurity or terrorism?
That's a very tricky one. It's very tricky because the pressure is enormous. And that's why you see, this is where in more gatekeeping is very important. This is why gatekeeping comes into play. But the pressure, especially with the dawn of digital media, social media, and the competition, I'm worrying about your rating, your viewership, because this is the dilemma. It's a serious dilemma, my understanding of it, because how do you now strike this balance you're talking about? At one point, does reporting banditry or giving bandits airtime, ample airtime, to air their grievances against the state, at what point does it stop? And at one point, it becomes glamour. It becomes glamorous. So this is a question you have to also ask, again, going back, the media is, what is the role of the media now? And what is the actual media itself? Is it a business or social service? That's the question. If you are running media as a business, then you also have to worry about ratings. Elsewhere, there are so many global organizations, media organizations, they are not actually news channels. They are more like show business. They are concerned about ratings. The more ratings they have, they are more likely to attract advertisers, and the more money they make. And forgetting their social responsibility in the process. What I mean, the social service they are rendering. Because the media, like we know, is so important that it's the only one recognized in the gallery, in the chambers of all parliaments. That's why we are referred at the fourth estate of the realm. After the executive, the judiciary, And the legislature, the media is there. And the role of the media, even constitutionally in Nigeria, is to hold government accountable. No set of professionals are given that much respect, apart from the judiciary. And the judiciary is not elected. The legislature is, the executive is. The judiciary is a process sanctioned by the constitution, by laws, by statutes. So now, at what point do you strike that balance, given the enormous pressure? And this is why I said gatekeeping is important. And normally gatekeepers are people who are editors, well-honed, they've honed their skills, they've been marinated in the process, well marinated, they know their onions, and they know that these are likely. Then you bring the Bible, Bible of broadcast journalism, the ethics.
Ethics.
What are you reporting? Is it accurate? Is it fair? Does it respect? How do you use images, text, pictures?
Words.
How do you construct them? You understand? And all the time, mindful, even those who are giving airtime to air their grievances, reminding them if they run foul of the law. So it takes a certain degree of professionalism.
And it comes from the editors.
It comes from the editors and the news hunter himself.
Okay.
The news gatherer himself. Because that's why the difference between mainstream media and social media, the gatekeeping process.
Okay.
It has to go through several layers of filtration before it hits the airwaves, before it gets into print. There are gatekeepers. But you see the social media, and even the digital media, is copy and paste. Especially in Nigeria. No much investigation. You find out the news gatherer, that is the reporter.
The reporter.
Is the editor, is the publisher, is the one that circulates it. So where gatekeeping, and that's why the mainstream media, because of this anxiety to break the news, sometimes they fail to go through the necessary checks. And then you have what you have. I'll give you instances during the NSAS. I'm slightly digressing from the topic, but during the NSAS protest in 2020, a major network carried the story that the National Ecumenical Center was set ablaze. And it turned out to be false. You imagine if the national mosque, in response, the natural reaction would be that some Muslim mobsters actually set the place ablaze, but it turned out to be untrue. If it turned out that they actually took content directly from social media. Another media house again said they spotted snipers atop a building. During the NSAS, atop a commercial building, a bank. They say there are snipers stationed by the government. And of course, the NBC find these major networks appropriately. But how often, you see, this is a cardinal, you don't do that. You have to be you have to filter, titrate. You have to filter, subjected to certain scrutiny because of the enormous mobilizing power of the media. One wrong turn and that's all. That's all it takes. And especially for the broadcast. Well, thankfully, even some of the documentaries in question, as contentious as they are, were not even done in the language where there would be, in the language that the combustible part of the society will take it and then lap it up, and then before you know it, there will be conflagration. What I mean? It was done in English. You understand? For television, notwithstanding that most people now, there is technology convergence. You have smart device, is your television, is your newspaper, source of information. But look at it, imagine if it was done on radio, and the vast majority of Nigerians could. But even radio cannot capture the visuals, the images, the amount of destruction, you understand, captured by television cameras. So really, this question is very key. How do you strike that balance? And now this is where I will throw it back to the gatekeepers now, the editors.
Okay. Because
an editor by far should be far more knowledgeable and experienced than the news hound. The news hound, even in documentaries, there are some things that you completely It's not everything. And I'm sure most of, the documentary by Trust and the documentary by BBC, they all gave the balance. You understand? So, but in the final analysis, I think the Trust, it just happens to be at the right place
at the wrong time.
At the wrong time. And that's why the scenes of BBC now are visited on
Interesting.
on Trust Limited.
All right. So now you talked about the role of the media in terms of service to the society, to educate and then entertain the society at the same time. So with all of this, how much is the media actually doing all of this? Are we at some point creating kind of a disservice to the public?
Yes. Yes. The media is doing a lot of disservice, especially the Nigerian kind of media, because you can tell without any, fear that most media organizations actually, they are filtering the views of their owners, media owners. Sometimes they determine content. It may be subconsciously, it may be consciously. Let me give you an example. When late Abiola set up the Concord newspaper, I imagine it would be so if it were television now. He now told the drivers of the process, they said, look, don't attack Islam, it's my religion. Don't attack polygamy, I'm polygamous. Don't attack my business interests. Any other thing, you can go ahead. So there are certain dues.
And that's why you see these things even happening up until now.
In this moment, you will see this thing that media owners also exert some kind of control of content in their media houses. Now, even at that, you realize that advertisers also, how often do you see MTN being attacked or any of the telecoms? Even if there are poor services, apart from occasional news, do you see telecoms being attacked on air or on print? Because they're heavy advertisers or big time companies. How often do you see Coca-Cola being attacked even in global media? You understand? So proprietary interest is there, advertorial interest is there, political interest is there. Do you see the NTA, for example, running foul of any government of the day? I'm just giving you an example. I'm asking this rhetorical question. Even if the whole country will be up in flames, NTA wouldn't be telling you about the weather. You understand? So there are also political interests there. So all this thing, you have to find a balance.
Okay.
And then private, more often than not, sometimes when it's come to even information now, the authenticity of any piece of information, ad or radio or television, or even in print, sometimes you find out that privately owned media organizations, they more often than not are the ones likely to filter fake news or some news that is not totally accurate than government owned. Government media, what they normally do is to black out a story that will make power uncomfortable. But that's not telling misinforming it. As long as you don't know, okay, no problem, we'll not do anything wrong, we will not let you know. But we report what will be pleasing. And then even this brings me to the question of developmental journalism. If you watch Nigerian media, you read Nigerian media, watch television, listen to radio, you think Nigeria is, well, we may be at war in some places, but you think Nigeria is all gloom. It's all doom, It's all doom. It's all blood and splatter. You
just pick cops from everywhere.
Everywhere. But come on, we are not doing that badly given our challenges. Why is the media not celebrating that? Why is the media always harping on divisive lines? Why will the media always look at Ali and Annabelle along the usual fault lines? You understand? Along the religious, cultural divide. Why not look at us as people? And this is the one cardinal principle of the media. The media, when I'm giving an example now, and the media feels that. I've seen instances where it suits the media, they will say 10 worshippers were massacred in the mosques. But when it suits them, they will say 10 Christians were killed in a church. I'm just giving you an example. How neutral is that? You understand the point I'm driving at? So unless we treat people, whether Muslim, Christian, animist, as people, as living, you understand? We won't get it right. And the Nigerian media, a section of it, not all of it, is susceptible to this kind of segmentation and, if you like, and they happen all the time on things that divide the nation. If you go through the content of newspapers in the 1960s and you just oppose it now, you would think that we've wasted 50 years of our lives in the same spot, but it's not always been so.
All right, so now we do for a break, but before we go on that break, very quickly, I'd like to get your thoughts on, help us understand the difference between media content and terrorism. When you have, in terms of reportage, when you have to report media, what is really media content or news or newsworthy, that's the word. And then this is supposed to be like, you should be careful when you're talking about terrorism or insecurity. Help us put that difference before we go on that break.
Well, when you see content, news content is different from program, for example. The media entertains, educates, and informs. But sometimes the media also misinforms. Like one American president said, he said, if you don't read newspapers, you are not informed. And if you read them, you are misinformed. Because more often than not, you find out there is this element of hyperbole. You exaggerate something that is not there. And in the context of the Nigerian media, because we happen all the time on negatives, and that's why we glamorize banditry, we glamorize, we say all the time, we don't celebrate the wins. We look at the negative. We don't look at the cup as half full. We look at it as half empty. So same thing. 6, half a dozen, which one? It's the same thing. But there is something that sounds more elevating when you say it's half a dozen than saying just 6. Oh, it's half a dozen. Then you ask, how many is a dozen? 12. Half a dozen. That doesn't sound so, so pleasing to the ear than just merely saying 6. So in using your content, you understand. Yes, when you report it in conflict zone, for example now, and it's impossible to divorce yourself from that reality if you are reporting a conflict zone. Look at what's happening in Palestine, for example. It's impossible not to side with the Palestinians.
Because I don't believe that all of these stories, they're there, they're brick and mortar. It's not like the media bringing in those stories. So it is already there. So how do you report them?
Professionally, when people kick against media content, especially government, like I always say, we don't invent the times. A professional will report the times. You don't create a story that is not there. But do you know that there was a BBC reporter that actually reported a story that is not real? He was sacked by the BBC concerning the Niger Delta. So even the BBC can fall prey to a mischievous reporter. Jeff Konangi is there in history. He created a story that was not there. So how circumspect can the editors be? You are not there. We sent you to do a profession. Then you disregard all the media ethics, the guiding principle. You created your own story. So now this question you're asking, why do you make the distinction? You see, like I said, look, when you're reporting bandits, you're reporting insurgents. These are outlaws. They're outlaws. They run foul of, but they have genuine grievances. Like in the case of the Trust documentary, one of the leading bandits there, he said, look, cattle were stolen, we reported, nothing was done. And then they are compelled into banditry. But you see, that sounds, they have a genuine case. And then did they report or did not? Were the cattle not stolen? Were they not victims of? I'm just giving you an example. So it's for the media to report all of this, but in such a manner that it will not inspire other people. All
right. So let's go for a break, and when we return, we'll definitely expand this conversation. I'll see you shortly. Don't move a muscle. We'll be right back.
Like I said, the government is actually quarreling with the messenger, not the message. What the government ought to have done is to put a light to some of the things raised by. Is it true that these people late complain their catches have been rustled? They don't have any other skills. They've sought state protection. They are not protected. And that's why they say, okay, if that's the case, there is no law. These are the things, these are the poses the government should be answering, not correlating with the man who took the trouble to help them. You understand? So, yes, Annabelle is an overkill. The government should have been more concerned about a media organization that reflects the viewpoint, either political or material, of their respective owners and the editors too. You understand?
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you missed quite a lot. Our guest on the show today is Ali. He is a journalist, and we've been talking about the sanctions meted to some broadcasting stations by the federal government with regards to the documentary on the Bandits Warlords of Zamfara State. All right, before we went on that break, you said quite a lot of things, and then we stopped at where you talked about how much the job of reporters, the gatekeepers, and then we are not supposed to do some panel beating to some stories, and then the right timing to air this kind of stories. So now let's talk about the federal government's sanction or the fines. What are your thoughts on the federal government's decision to raise its sledgehammer against this broadcasting stations? That's, you have Trust TV, you have Multichoice, NTA-Startimes, and then the rest of them, with regards to the 5 million naira sanctions to be paid on or before August 30th. Is that actually a fair punishment or punitive measure when you have some of this state, in fact, even the state governor of that same state, Zamfara State, who came out openly to ask people to protect themselves, go get licensed guns, and they are even yet to be sanctioned. And asking someone who cannot even kill a chicken or a rat to go get gun to protect himself and his family. And isn't that even creating fear, panic, and chaos that the federal government is talking about? So, and yet they're yet to even go under the radar of the federal government. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's an overkill. You see, depending on how you look at the media, if you're in position of authority, always look at it, what is the media saying? It will serve as you get a feedback mechanism. Maybe your commanders are misleading you, your security apparatus is misleading you, your advisors are misleading you, and then with the media, you get a mirror reflection of you. Because if the media reports a breach, even if it's once, it's telling on the government and the leader of the government of the day. So the media, if done properly, reports accurately, fairly, justly, mindful of certain ethics. The media is a partner in progress. Not the media we listed that is partisan, a section of it, creating stories. Like I gave you with the case of Jeff Konange of the BBC, reported something that wasn't there, and he was fired. This is the way it should be. If the media reports inaccurately, either out of genuine mistake is understandable. But mischief, that is a complete no-no. Now, in this case, the documentary, was it mischievous? You just
was it
actually, or was it genuine? You just inadvertently answer part of the question. The call by the governor of Zamfara. And he wasn't the first one to say, look, citizens, arm yourself. The Minister of Defense said so. Governor of Taraba State said so. So many of them actually say, look, we're overwhelmed. Go protect yourself. The former Chief of Army Staff and one of Nigeria's foremost soldiers, General Tiwa Danjuma, also made that same. Why were they not fined? Why were they not? Is it you are quarreling now with the messenger, not the message? You see, this is why I said the federal government, actually, it was a sledgehammer. It was an overkill. You are killing a fly with a sledgehammer. And you know, this action actually drove people to now go look for that documentary on YouTube. People, now, if you look at it from that moment to that, the views have increased, which ordinarily people were dismissive. And they thought, well, in Nigerians, you know, Nigerians will have this amazing shock absorber. we just about can absorb just about anything. So I think it's an overkill. And like I said, the government is actually correlating with the messenger, not the message. The government, what the government ought to have done is to put a light to some of the things raised by. Is it true that these people laid complaint their catches have been rustled? They don't have any other skills. They've sought state protection. They are not protected. And that's why they say, okay, if that's the case, there is no law. These are the things, these are the poses the government should be answering, not correlating with the man who took the trouble to help them. You understand? So, yes, Annabelle is an overkill. The government should have been more concerned about a media organization that reflects the viewpoint, either political or material, of their respective owners and the editors too. You understand? Then the media, and then this is where professional organization, for example, the Nigerian Press Organization, which is an umbrella body of the NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, BON, B-O-N, you understand, is the sanctioned body to look at some of these things, and then also to impose certain, well, not imposition, to ask the various, well, not stakeholders, participants in the media process, because media is a process. It's always evolving.
But are they even doing their job in that regard? Now you have this kind of sanctions coming through, and then
nobody is saying anything.
He barely hear anything.
Nobody is saying anything. You understand? So this is it, and this is the tragedy of the Nigerian state. But like I said, it's not all blood and splatter. There are shining moments. The media has done that every now and again. And sometimes, okay, for example, it's just that the media is not dwelling on that. The things are binding us together. Let me tell you, one instance, there was this senseless, sporadic, well, now it's intermittent clashes between Muslim and non-Muslim in Plateau State. And then during one of this, one imam, he received a UN Medal of Honor. He hit so many non-Muslims in his mosques. Why is it that the media is not dwelling on characters like that? You understand? Why dwell on butchers who clearly they are not representing any faith? Christian youth at a point protected Muslim youth to pray. Why the media is not dwelling on that? Why is the media not identifying such elements to interview them, promote them? Why is the media always harping on people who would bring about this unity? You understand? How come the media is not, the Nigerian media has no reason above that? The Nigerian media, without any even reservation, I would say, if I listen to such a media organization now, blindfolded, I will tell you which medium is that from the content over time.
So now, are there other subtle reconciliation method, more like engagement between the federal government and the broadcasting stations? Even like
unfortunately,
sometimes we barely even hear about the NOAs, but at least
the federal government is not even engaging enough. It's not engaging. The federal government, look, leadership is a very tough process. Leadership is not about individuals even now. And I may disagree with you fundamentally, but if I'm in the position of leadership, I must engage you. I may not like you. I don't even have to like you. You don't have to like me. But we just have to do the right thing. But you find out that almost always, spokesman upon spokesman, people who should engage people, given the right tools, the information, the right information. Until recently, well, occasionally the federal government or some elements engage media practitioners, give them updates. But sometimes to get information, even to help facilitate certain, you find out the information is simply not there. You put a call to certain key, and then the response to inquiry is very slow. At a time that news break almost on the hour. And like you said, the pressure you identified earlier, there's always pressure. There's a competition, is stiff, it's getting stiffer and stiffer. And you have to worry how you're going to run your business, because media is a business now. You have to pay bills, you have to pay workers. You understand? You
I
have
still
that
worry
certain-
about staying in the business.
Exactly. So sometimes people, if you don't, and that's why I worked in the newspaper once. It was a sin to go to press with a story that is unbalanced. That several efforts to get no, that's not enough. It's not enough. You must get the persons, or you must make sure that there is a way you've gotten across there, or give really valid evidence that you've called so person that they fail to respond. You send text to the number, and then in the story you quote the number, the text messages, or the time you went to see the people concerned, so that you balance. But sometimes we just go, if you want to be mischievous, we will just go to town that we attempt to get the so person. But it's because also those who are saddled with information dissemination on the part of either government or corporate organization, they are slow. They're slow, very slow. Or when something happens, they don't even anticipate it. The moment there is a breach or a glitch, you prepare a press statement, because the media sometimes works with information. Unless they're outrightly mischievous, and there are so many mischievous media, especially the digital kind. So many. There are so people over time, they don't even respect them because they know they are mischievous. There are some digitally cyber-based media, digital media.
The new media.
The new media, like they call them. You see their content, you say, oh no, this one is propagandist, because it's anything goes. They've lost respect over time, as opposed to mainstream media, because of the filtration. The gatekeeping is simply not there. Now, even where there is gatekeeping, this is where subjectivity bias sometimes is so apparent. If you have tribal or ethnic or religious solidarity, you find out that even the gatekeepers are not free of that, against the ethics of the profession.
So now we know that the media is the life wire, the oxygen with regards to security and broadcasting. So now one would have actually thought that this documentary or filming would be valued in terms of intelligence reports that it has brought. At least it should help the security officials to know where these bandits are, and then how they can quickly clamp on them. But now that it has happened, what are the next measures that are supposed to be taken? Because now, aside the sanction, because BBC is saying they will definitely give more, and the other media stations will definitely want to bring more, and then it means that you keep going under the radar of the federal government. So what are your advice on the right way to broadcast some of this content?
No, there's not two ways about it. You report what is the truth,
and then you get sanctioned by the federal government.
No, the thing is, you see, the federal government, unfortunately, is coming across as a bully. It's coming across as a bully and intolerant of, and it won't stop, because even military dictatorship now tried to muzzle the media. It went underground, and especially now in digital period. We are talking of digital age. We're talking of technology convergence. We're talking of media convergence now, where you read newspapers, you watch television, all on your smart device. You don't have to be, location now is immaterial. You could choose to broadcast from anywhere on the surface of the earth, so long there is internet service there. So the federal government is merely chasing shadows. The best way to go about this, you understand, in order not to, and we're under democracy. If people they should be punished, and for punishment, regulatory agencies should be up and about, without victimization.
Okay.
And this is where I think Trust Television was needlessly victimized. Just like before then, there was a radio station that was similarly victimized, Vision FM. There was this discussion program. It was banned, and they were fined on account of asking the right questions. That was in the course of the year, early in the year. I think, I can't remember, at Vision FM, there's a flagship program there. They call it Idom Mikia in Hausa. And because they raised questions about some very powerful individuals in the government. And these questions were driven from past public knowledge. They merely sensitized filter them, and ask the relevant questions. And then they were sledgehammered too. So how long are you going to continue to do that? Somebody calls you Annabelle, fine. Tomorrow if somebody calls you Anna, then you get mad. Somebody calls you Annabelle, you get mad. Then I'm just giving an example. And then you always giving, like you said, punishing them, charging them. Fine. Well, some people are counting the days of the government in power. I'm just giving you one other way people are dealing with it. Okay, at least we've endured 7 years. Another couple of months ago. And this is, I'm saying because, look, you don't quarrel with the messenger. You quarrel with the message. If the message, then you go and fix their problems. Fix it, they're helping you. But don't say no. And then ascribe something totally extraneous outside the purview of what is under discussion, under scrutiny. We're talking about.
Now, taking a cue from where you just landed, sorry to cut in there. Now, there's this, we all need each other.
Absolutely.
The media, there's federal government, the security officials, we all need each other.
Absolutely.
And now, but there's this love-hate relationship that exists between the media and not maybe the security officials or maybe the federal government. Let's put it that way. Some people have actually said that the federal government has just been the judge and the jury at this time. But then, when the security officials, when they have their wins, like you talked about, you need the media to help you publicize your victories, your successes, how much you've been able to clamp down on insecurity and these terrorists. And then when the going is not so good, that's when you have this kind of punishment given to the media. So how do you actually appropriately put that relationship between the media and the federal government or the security officials?
See, anywhere of the media and the government is always a cat and mouse relationship. It's always cat and mouse. And especially in third world countries, and especially in Nigeria, where so many things are done in secrecy. There's no transparency. Example, the recent donation of vehicles to Niger Republic. It was revealed by, well, quote unquote, an investigative journalist. But I would say somebody leaked the whole thing. You understand? So in a situation like this, when there is no trust, the media will be suspicious because the media role is to hold government accountable. Automatically, some people don't want to account. In this government, there are people who don't want to account. They don't even want to. When I remember the former secretary of the government, Babachir, before he was finally booted out in the quest of the grass cutting saga. And then he was asked the presidency. He said, which presidency are you talking about? Where I'm the presidency, I'm part of the presidency. So you see this kind of arrogance and impunity, culture of impunity, and then which has found expression lately even. You see people convicted felons, people convicted, given state pardon, and then coming back in our faces, wanting to go back into elective posts, to be part of the lawmaking process. It's happening. You understand? So the media and the government, they will never see. They will always be like this. But then when it comes to fighting something, a common enemy, what confronts us now is a common enemy, insecurity. And it's threatening to overwhelm. This is why they sheath the sword. Okay. You come together. And how? You interface all the time. Give the right, and then realize also, because the media is doing a patriotic duty, notwithstanding that media ownership also sometimes, okay, for example now, look at nationwide. Most of the media owners, they are politically exposed persons. Active politicians, nothing wrong with that. But how free is their media of their influences? You understand? Elsewhere, Rupert Murdoch, a media mogul, we know his sympathies, but he's never stood for election. You understand what I'm saying? We all know where his sympathies are. You can say without any reservation where Fox News will be at a time like this. So, really, there should be that closing of rank to fight a common enemy. Okay. You understand? And this common enemy is insecurity. It will not do when the media exposes breaches. You look at it critically. At what point? Then, if you subject it to the crucible, to the nitty-gritty of ethical reporting, then you can catch the media there. Literally pants down. You can catch, and then you, like I was giving you the example of the major networks that said this one reported that snipers were launched to deal with NSAS protesters, and this one said the National Economical Center was set ablaze. That is, it's a no-no. That is really awful. It was one single broadcast that said the genocide in Rwanda. You understand? Well, you say Rwanda is a small country. Nigeria is vast, and that's to our advantage. Otherwise, Nigeria's unity has been under sustained assault over the years, in the last 40, 50 years, since the end of the Civil War, by, regrettably, a section of the media. Spewing hate, half-truth, and outrightly misinforming the Nigerian people for certain vested political interest.
All right. So even as we begin to round up now, like we said, I have quite a lot of social media messages, but we'll not be able to take them. But one of them said the federal government is just acting as the enforcer and then the judge and the punishment material. Okay. All right. So now with that, in that regard, looking at that, now you have some media stations that they've complained that they've not paid their workers' salary, or they complained of one issue or the other. And then you just begin to wonder, how come the federal government is not going after those kind of media stations? Why are you not looking at media stations that you have journalists who have worked for years and then they're not being paid? Why are they not looking at things like that? Instead, actually, like I always say, we always like to major on the minor and minor on the major. What are your thoughts on that? Very quickly?
No, you see, the thing is, this is the tragedy of the Nigerian situation. You understand? They say you've not removed the speck in your eye, and then you want to remove somebody else's. You understand? Sometimes if the government wants to really be smart, it's just like people, without appearing to muzzle the press, there are existing laws that you can even picket media organization. Ask labor. Encourage them to do that. You understand? But then you see, incidentally, it serves the interest of some elements to see that even media people, journalists, are enslaved.
But it's supposed to be their job to actually check on that too. That's the federal government. No,
you see, that's why you have labor unions. Even at the individual media organization, you have labor unions. You have the NUJ is there. You understand? Ratau is there. It's all part of it. Then if you don't fight for your rights, you are busy fighting for the right of other people. You can't even fight for your rights. And this is the tragedy of the Nigerian situation. And some of us, all of us who, even in the union leadership line, for example, I'm a unionist. But you see, sometimes even to enforce certain ethics, to remind people, then you realize that because their loyalty naturally is to where their bread are buttered, not to the profession. Sometimes you find it difficult for some practitioners to do the right thing. You understand? Out of either for fear, for bread, or for safety. You get my point, Annabelle? So yes, and that's why the federal government can afford to be the judge, the jury, the accuser, and the executioner.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Ali. It's always a pleasure having these discussions with you.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Annabelle.
All right, viewers. So you've heard it all. We've been chatting with Ali. He is a journalist, and he's also the vice president of the Nigeria's Guild of Editors. And it's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. Keep watching The Conversation, because you never know who my next guest will be and what my next topic will be all about. I'll see you again next time. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless Nigeria.